What are we going to do with all these tomes? How am I going to rebalance the tomes in Engage Maddening mode? So what are we looking at? So no changes, we leave it as is. Forge cost reduction, we reduce the cost of forging. Forge buff effect, we improve what the effect of forging does or modify it. Rework, we fundamentally change it. Nerf, we make it worse. All right, so tomes. So first we have Tiramisu. Tiramisu, it's a joke tome, so no changes. This is, I think, like some Engage thing, so we're going to be skipping this last one here, so just ignore that. So Tiramisu, no changes. It's a joke weapon. It's suspiciously colored, we'll say that. It looks bad a lot of different ways. But yeah, it's a joke tome. You don't really use it to play seriously. You can't forge it. Next we have Surge. So Surge, base Surge, I would buff its forge effect a little bit. Like, you're still not going to be using it because Elsurge exists. But base Surge, I would just buff slightly in some way on the forge. Give it something. Maybe give it a void. Maybe give it, I don't know, give it something. Like a little bit of crit rate maybe, +5 more crit. Because like that's kind of how the Surge tomes are. They kind of have a little bit of crit rate compared to the other tomes. Aside from Obscurity, which I think has crit rate as well. Next we have Elsurge. I would reduce the forge cost on Elsurge. Elsurge is a good tome and it can one round. It also can have 3 range when you're a Sage engaged on Byleth, which is pretty cool. So 3 range Elsurge kind of slaps, but obviously because it has that expensive, you know, tome forge cost, which is like really the issue with tomes overall, it kind of suffers. So, but it's still good. You can still run it. There's still builds for it. Next we have Fire. I would buff its effects, like its forge effects. Like you don't really, I've never forged a fire tome. You can always just turn it into an Elfire or just wait until the game hands you one, because in early game you really don't need to forge it anyways. Most enemies get one-rounded by it, so you can kind of just ignore the fact that you can forge it. So we can just buff the forge effects to give it something more. Maybe it has better damage scaling, something like that, something basic. Next we have Elfire. So same thing as Elsurge. I think the forge cost is just way too high. It's kind of crazy how high it is, because if it was cheaper, I would use it more, but it's really not that much cheaper to forge than Bolganone. So it's like, why not just wait until I get that or just forge that? Speaking of which, I do also think Bolganone is way too expensive to forge. It's basically just an expensive Leven sword. It is true that it has higher base might than Leven sword. However, if you want to +5 this, it's going to cost you substantially more silver. So generally, it's going to be like +1 to 2 damage at like +3 relative to a +5 Leven sword, which, you know, if you +3 a Bolg, it's similar to +5ing in terms of cost a Leven sword. So then you're ending up with like a damage difference of like 1 to 2. So ultimately, it is basically just not good. Well, that's not true. It's good. It can do what the Leven sword can do, which is overpowered. But the Leven sword is just infinitely more efficient to forge, and there's sword power. So not only is Leven sword competitive in terms of damage, but it usually will outdamage it'll outdamage Bolg because sword power exists, and because the well exists, you can reliably get Anna to like sword power 2 to 3 super early, or Citrine if you want to run Citrine. She just needs speed fixed. And either of those can be bondage shielded and just completely demolish the game on Leven sword. And by the time you get Pandreo, you know, you're not getting sword power back until you get like Roy. So you get Roy post chapter 19. So quite a while. So that early sword power matters. The fact that there is Resonance, which is like Tome power. There's also Magic Plus, but Magic Plus is substantially more expensive compared to sword power. So like sword power 5 is 5 KSP for +10 damage per hit. And that includes other swords too, so it has flexibility. Whereas like Magic Plus, I think is like 5 or 6,000 for +5 or something ridiculous. It's like really expensive. So you get half, you know, costs you half. So, but yeah, it's basically like, it's also too expensive to forge. So I always kind of view it as like the worst version of that. Now there's units who can't use Leven sword on certain classes, like if you're running Ivy on Lindworm or whatever. That's what, yeah, Lindworm. Yeah, Lindworm and Sleipnir is her sister. Okay. I was thinking that was Hort's class, but that's just not the case. All right, so yeah, I would reduce its forge costs. It would make it more competitive with Leven Sword. I think that's really its problem right now. Obviously, Pandreo can run this too. Some people like it because it's harder to break. That is a good argument. But if you're bonded shielding it, you're not getting broken anyways. So you bonded shield a unit, they cannot get broken on the first hit. Assuming, and if they only get hit once, they don't get broken. All right, Wind. Some new effect, I don't know. It'd be cool if Wind moved enemies. It'd be cool if Surge, hear me out, all right? Surge creates a water tile at the enemy. This, oh my god, this makes so much sense. Not even just because of the theming, but because of what the thing does. So it has infinite hit rate, and then it improves the hit rate of your other tomes and your allies' attacks. So this would be really cool. Creates water tile, fire creates fire tile, wind moves enemy back. That would be cool, wouldn't it? That'd be interesting. It would be a little bit utility, because then you could reposition an enemy, like hit him with like a wind tome and push him back, and maybe that opens up an attack angle or some combo or something. That's like new layers. Creating fire tiles also creates like an obstruction, so, as with water. So these could be interesting mechanics, but maybe moves an enemy back, and you know, some buff on, maybe it's more accurate. Maybe it does even more effective damage versus flyers or something, some kind of thing like that. I don't know. Elwind, I think it's fine, but just needs its forge cost reduced. Same thing with Excalibur. Excalibur is great, it just is too expensive to forge, and it's just basically like a bad bow. Because you can forge a Radiant Bow for like nothing. Like it's so cheap to forge a Radiant Bow. And the Radiant Bow is just so good at one-shotting flyers on most units. So the fact that this is so expensive to forge and can't reliably kill, because that's like its big use case, because it's weaker than Elfire, so you know, it's much weaker than Bolg. I find myself almost never using the wind tomes. There are situations where they can be useful, like it's good to have them in your inventory, but archers just kill things better. Radiant Bow is really good. Thunder. Maybe Thunder could hold enemies in place for a turn. That might be too overpowered. It'd be cool if there's like some kind of paralyze effect, but that might be too overpowered. Honestly, I think just being 3 range is fine. Maybe better forge effect, something. Maybe improved hit rate or something. I don't know. Some kind of effect. Can't really say what, but like base level Thunder, you're just going to upgrade it to El Thunder. El Thunder, I think it needs its forge cost reduced. Thoron, I think it needs its forge cost reduced. A lot of these are like end game viable tomes that are just, in my opinion, way too expensive to forge for no reason. Thoroning things, there are builds that can kill, but most of them use DLC if you want to reliably kill. And DLC, there's so many ways to break the game with DLC. It's not even fun for me, so like I don't really like to evaluate DLC. But Thoron without DLC, you can crit engrave it for like, I don't know, 20 to 30% chance to one-shot randomly. There's like Citrine builds that can kind of one-shot with like Great Thunder, but without the DLC, it's not really. So it's a poke thing. It does 30 to 50% of enemies' HP. It's great for debuffs. Like if you have a unit that just has like Draconic Hex and Canter, then they're like a staff bot, like Sage or like a Saline Vidam or something. They can just Thoron poke, debuff. Maybe they crit, maybe they don't. But if they don't crit, they debuff, and then they Canter, then they staff bot in between Thoron poking. So they're kind of like a utility. That's kind of nice. That's kind of how I view Thoron. There are obviously use cases where it can kill, but if you're attacking with Thoron, it's usually to poke enemies that are at range. Otherwise, you'd be attacking with Leven Sword or Bolg, or maybe Elfire or some other tome. But yeah, I think the forge cost on the like El Thunder and Thoron are just way too high. Nova, I think, is the same story, but I'm gonna throw it into rework. So Nova is an S rank tome that can quad. And for some reason, this game thinks tomes are better than they are, like by a huge margin. The game seems to think the Leven Sword is like nothing, and the Killer Axe is nothing, and the Radiant Bow is nothing, but these are like some of the best weapons in the game. And then there's things like Nova that I don't even think I've seen anyone use it and it was good. Like, I think I've tried using it, and it's like, obviously Pandreo could use it because he's like the highest build mage, right? Highest build, highest speed mage. But it's like, what is he gonna do with it? Like, you can't enemy phase on it, so you can't use bonded shield. It's just gonna, if you're quadding, it's gonna one round, but so does Bolg. So like, why am I dumping absurd amounts of silver like, just give me an S rank weapon that's overpowered. Who gives a shit? You know what I mean? Like, they do this like thing where they treat S rank weapons like it's an achievement just to forge it to max, and it kind of is, because they cost like 50 silver to max out, and it's just like the crafting costs on them are way too steep for no reason. I think what they wanted to do with this game initially, I feel like there's like a design thread. Like, when you design a game, you like plan things out and test stuff and figure out like what the hell you're doing. And it almost feels like there was a thread where they wanted there to be like more online and like event-based components where you can easily get like more silver and steel and iron and money, and you kind of like play like the Somniel almost feels like they wanted to make it like a gacha game where it's like Heroes, where you just like run small maps and just keep doing stuff, because they have like those trials which are kind of like that, but I think they maybe ran out of time, or they like figured out like they just decided it wasn't worth pursuing, because I think that's why some of these costs are so high, because it's very reminiscent of like MMO stuff where they will hand you a thing and be like, oh, look at this, and you're like, oh wow, this is cool, is it good? And they're like, no, but you can upgrade it and then it's good. It's like, oh cool, how long does it take to upgrade? 100 hours of grinding. It's kind of reminiscent of that. So I feel like that's why the costs are so high, because like reasonably 50 silver is more than like an entire playthrough's worth of silver, like assuming you don't convert like shit tons of iron and steel into silver. So like, where are you getting 50 freaking for one weapon? Like, really? One weapon, 50 silver? My entire playthrough. So I think maybe there was this idea that they wanted more post-game content or some kind of online component where you could like continually farm. Because I guess like with the thing with like the dogs, though I don't know that the dogs was intentional, because when like the dogs, like we all know you use dogs, and every time you beat a map or do a thing, it resets the dogs, and the dogs can produce silver. Great. But the devs have other things in there that I think they assume we would value that we definitely don't, because they suck. Because silver and steel are just like too valuable of resources. They're too hard to get. So when your dogs produce silver, those are good dogs, but when they don't, they suck. And if you're running things that aren't dogs, you're just not getting silver, which sucks. So this idea that you'd have to like reset, like you do like an online thing, it resets your dogs. They were assuming you're probably running different things. Like, I don't know. There's like there's a lot of weird, disjointed design decisions that don't make sense. That only really make sense if it's like it's post game or it's meant to be a grind. They didn't implement the grind or whatever. All right, so next we have Obscurity, whatever the hell, you know, Obscure Tome, Claire Obscure 33, the hit new game that everyone's obsessed with. So this is Veil only Tome, has a little bit of crit on it. I think she can use this in other classes, right? Like she can be like a mage knight and run this. It has like crit rate on it. I'm gonna actually Google this really quick. Let's check this out. Obscurity. Obscurite. I was called Obscurity. Alright, so Fell Dragon only. But can she use this? Oh no, I think that means her though. Yeah, I think that means her, not the class Fell Dragon. If it is only on that class, let me know. I don't really run this. So silver costs, it's Bolg, the Forge. Base might of 14, weight of 12. If you can run this on Mage Knight, it's decent. But isn't it just a bad Bolg? Might just be a bad Bolg. So 14 might, 12 weight. Let's check out Bolganone. So let's compare it. Yeah, isn't it 1611? Yeah, it's just bad Bolg. Bad Bolg. It has crit rate. Does crit rate matter? How much crit rate though? Forging does not improve its crit rate. 10 crit? No. Rework. Needs buffed. Too weak. Even if you can use it on Mage Knight, like why would you? It's one more weight, and Veil is not known for her build stat. She's another, like every single like female mage in this game is like a frail little, you know, little lady, a little old lady with small build. So yeah, needs buffed. It's just worse than Bolg. 10 crit doesn't mean shit, dude. 10 crit's nothing. Like if you crit engrave that and run Wrath, like maybe you'll hit 40% crit rate at half HP on a mage. And like if you're half HP on a mage, anything will kill you. I do not recommend running that build. That's terrible. So its crit rate is too low to matter. Its might is much lower than Bolg. It's 2 points lower. Its weight is higher than Bolg, and its forge cost is the same as Bolg. So it just needs reworked. It needs serious buffs to justify using it ever. It's cool. It looks really cool, but it's objectively worse than Bolg. And compared to Leven's sword, it's 1 more point of damage, but also 1 more weight. It's worse than Leven's sword too. Because like if you throw Veil on Chicken, get her sword power like 2 to 3, and get her like speed +4. She's doing pretty good on Marth. You pop Marth, she attacks 3 times. She doubles, attacks 3 times, has sword power. She's doing well. She could be like doing like 70 to 90% damage to most targets doing that for her joining SP cost. That's pretty good. Whereas like with this, like what the hell would you do with this? You know what I mean? Like you're better off just popping Seraphim on her and just having her be effective, getting her on Mage Knight, something like that. So yeah, it's just not good. Needs serious buffs. How would I buff it? If it's going to be 12 weight, I want at least 18 damage and 20 crit, and we're talking. Because that's somewhat crit, you know, 20 crit's meaningful. More base damage. At least let it be better than Bolg, because it weighs more, you know, same forge costs. Or maybe just give it 20 might. That'd be interesting. Just let her hit like a truck. I mean, she's still lower magic than... she's much lower magic than Anna. Probably even lower magic than Pandreo. Her magic stat's decent, but I'm pretty sure at the same level she's lower magic than Pandreo. It might be the same. I could be wrong about that, but it's definitely lower than Anna and Citrine, who are the highest of the mages. So yeah, that's what I would do with the tomes. I would, you know, mostly reduce the forge cost. That's the big issue. And obviously rework the 2 clear offenders. And then this will just put a nerf, even though I don't even know what the hell this is. This is like lightning or something. Who cares? It's like some thing. I mean, that doesn't matter. All right, what do you guys think? Where would you move these and why? This is more straightforward because a lot of the tomes have like the exact same costs, so it's not like there's too much variation going on here. But yeah, peace.